Uh, Very warm welcome and very good afternoon to everybody here. My name is Vibhaka Agsi, and I'm here on behalf of the Indian Merchant Chambers in my capacity as chairperson of the Knowledge, Skills and Education Committee. And I'm very excited to have two of our committee members today in this event, and they've led and curated today's event, Bharti Thakur and Aditya Patil. Big shout out to both of you for this initiative and for taking whatever it took to put together this esteemed panel. Thank you, Bharti, and thank you, Aditya. I will be formally introducing Bharti as well very shortly. But first, today's topic is preparing today's students for tomorrow's world. Pertinent topic with all the changes that have gone on in the last 2 years, and with God knows what else is about to come our ways. And I will first request Mr. Juza Khorakibala, President, Indian Merchant Chambers, to give the opening remarks for today's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Vibha. Good afternoon to all the participants of this very interesting topic, preparing today's students for tomorrow's world. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to this fireside chat on education, organized, of course, under the chairmanship of Vibha. Education is no longer centered upon a back and forth between students and teachers, but instead it has taken a more networked approach, with students having their own direct connection to a variety of different information sources. Recently, I've been reading a book called Future is Faster Than You Think. And it's amazing how things are changing worldwide. Leave aside the pandemic, which has distorted certain issues, but how digital science, how material science, how biological sciences, mobility, infrastructure are all in very curious ways getting together, connecting the dots, and providing a different technology, a different way and different lifestyle to all of us. As I was reading this book, I realized that what they are saying is that you will have air taxis, Uber air taxis, commercially done in Chicago by 2024 or 2025. They are saying that it will be cheaper to take an air taxi in Chicago than to go by road. It will be safer than going by road. Now, these kind of technological advances are happening right under our feet. The carpet is being pulled out under our feet as we speak, and how it affects our lifestyle, how it affects even education per se, is something that we need to really imagine, the way things are moving so fast in terms of technology. So in the formative years, children need to be provided with an overall exposure to all the facets of learning, instead of restrict them to a kind of a classroom learning. Because as I said earlier, the technology is coming from all directions. The world has entered the fourth industrial revolution at a very accelerating speed. A new age career, gig economy, remote working, and the need to be relevant amongst the dynamic changes is becoming a burning question for all organizations. Though big companies and conglomerates are doing their best to upskill their workforce, a downsizing is inevitable if the existing skill set doesn't match the needs of the business. Today, as we all know, robots have literally taken over a lot of areas, especially in the Western world and in China. Thus, corporate leaders are not only the only ones that are worried about the changing global scenario, parents and educators are equally concerned. In times like this, it is important that training for future challenges starts at the grassroots level. Parents and educators together need to prepare children for the industry of tomorrow. A famous author was quoted saying that the illiterate of the 21st century are not the ones who cannot read and write, but the ones who cannot learn and unlearn. I think we all have to do a lot of unlearning as we go forward. This statement holds true in the current system, where there is a constant need to learn new concepts and unlearn archaic notions. The American philosopher John Dewey once said, if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. Educators, schools, government officials, and parents must rethink education and how to prepare the next generation to take advantage of the plethora of opportunities and overcome the challenges enabled by ever-increasing technological change. Friends, we have with us today excellent speakers with domain expertise who will share their insights on preparing today's students for tomorrow's world. I would like to welcome Mrs. Bharti Thakur, founder and CEO, New Millennium Education Partners, Mr. Aditya Patil, founder and CEO, Ascent International School, Mumbai, Professor Mauro Bordignon, Head of Academics, H Farm International School, Italy, and Mr. Roshan Gandhi, CEO, City Montessori Schools, Lucknow. Before I conclude, let me give you a little brief about Indian Merchants Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It's a premier chamber in the country with a rich legacy spanning over 105 years of excellent service to the trade, industry, and commerce. With a membership base of over 5,000 members and over 150 trade associations affiliated to it, the chamber represents and advocates the interests of 400,000 business and industry establishments across the country from diverse sectors of industry. Through its various expert committees, IMC provides policy inputs for the government, both central and state, and is continually engaged in interaction with policymakers at various levels. The Chamber is now a cradle for nurturing young talents and promoting emancipation of women through Young Leaders Forum and Ladies Wing, which have become embodiment of youth, enterprise, and positivism, proactive thought leadership, and a movement for women empowerment and entrepreneurship. The theme for this year is Engaging Maharashtra and Building India. Once again, I welcome you all to this interesting event and have a great evening filled with learning and knowledge. Thank you. Over to Vibha.
Thank you, dear President, for your welcoming remarks. I particularly love the bit about having to unlearn and learn. And we're looking forward to this session, going to be moderated by Bharti Thakur today. Bharti, I hope you're going to help us learn and unlearn several things as guided by our president here today. For everyone who doesn't know Bharti's work, I've been familiar with Bharti's work for over a decade now, and have had the pleasure of working with her in a professional capacity as well. Bharti Thakur, founder and CEO of New Millennium Education Partners. They provide consultancy services to blue chip schools and education companies, both in India and abroad. She's a media technology and communications graduate from Denison University in the United States. Bharti has also directed films, over 30 films in the education domain. And she's authored 2 state-of-the-art books. One is called 21 Schools of the 21st Century, and the other is called Future Ready Schools of the New Millennium. With that exposure, with that depth of expertise, I'm sure today's panel is going to be extremely insightful. Over to you, Bharti, and thank you so much once again for curating this panel for us.
Great. Thank you, Vibha. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this IMC webinar. I'm totally amped, excited, and thrilled to be here with some of the most forward-thinking educators. And I'm delighted to welcome our wonderful attendees on this worldwide webinar. Well, here we are, and unfortunately, we can't all meet in person yet. Nevertheless, I hope you gain many insights from what I'm sure is going to be a very lively and enlightening conversation. Today, we will closely examine 3 themes in this panel discussion titled Education 4.0, Preparing Today's Students for Tomorrow's World. Number 1, we're going to look at the impact of the 4th Industrial Revolution on education and what parents need to be aware of. Number 2, what parents need to bear in mind while selecting a future-ready school. And number 3, the new approaches schools are adopting to develop in students an entrepreneurial mindset, which they're going to need in the future. So without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful array of panelists. I'm going to start with Professor Mauro Bordignon. He's the head of academics at H Farm International Boarding School in Treviso, Italy, and the group of schools that it encompasses. H Farm is amongst the world's most futuristic boarding schools for students ages 12 to 18 years and is known as Europe's most important innovation hub. Professor Mauro has diverse experience as an economics and law teacher and as a jazz musician. He has been awarded the Best Economics Teacher Prize in Italy and is the author of several textbooks on law and economics. Next up, we have Aditya Patil. Aditya is the founding CEO of Ascend International School, Mumbai, which he promoted in 2011 jointly with his father, Bhagat Patil. Grounded in contemporary research, Ascend is among the city's most progressive schools where learning is mapped to the future. And in a city where the system of education has been very traditional, Ascend is leading the way for the community to think differently about education, learning, and academic rigor. So welcome, Aditya. And Roshan, gives me great pleasure to welcome Roshan Gandhi, who is the CEO of City Montessori Schools, Lucknow. CMS is the world's largest city school with 57,000 students. Roshan is an alumnus of Oxford University with an MBA in Education Leadership from UCL. And Roshan leads transformation across all the City Montessori schools. So welcome, Roshan. So before we start this panel discussion, I'm going to share a short video with you to kind of preface this discussion and set the stage. So can we have the video, please?
Talked and we listened. We had to memorize quite a lot too. A lot of time was spent giving out books and collecting them up again. We were sitting in rows in desks so we could see the board better, because talk and chalk was the way.
There must be an industrial revolution in education, in which educational science and the ingenuity of educational technology combine to modernize the grossly inefficient and clumsy procedures of conventional education. Sidney L. Pressey, 1924.
These young people are studying in a new way.
A computing calculator designed for use in high school classrooms has created tremendous excitement among educators.
The tool which has made this possible is the high-speed digital computer operating with electronic precision on great quantities of information.
If we think about the third industrial revolution, that was PCs and the internet, and we just about caught up with that. The fourth industrial revolution is what becomes possible from those technologies.
Industry 4.0 is the next big shift in the way that manufacturing operates. Digital know-how is going to be hugely important, and then people will need to be flexible because the world will change.
The future workplace and future societies, we're still moulding them as we go, and technology is one of the main pillars in what is shaping what the future will look like.
The pace of change is remarkable, with the introduction of these exponential technologies creating a paradigm shift to create Education 4.0.
Lectures aren't fit for purpose anymore. Using textbooks and teaching in a Victorian sort of method with rows of students, listening to the teacher, taking notes, it's obsolete. We need to use our time in lessons to actually have those meaningful mentoring one-to-ones that can never be replaced. The technology gives us that time if we use it correctly.
Rather than being something that's scary, we can use technology to be something that's very liberating for people, so that instead of having to go through the rigmarole of institutional learning as it's been in the past, we can actually use smart robotics, smart computers to make learning more accessible to more people and to actually tailor it to individual needs.
This whole cluster of AI technologies will make learning for students more rewarding, teaching for academics more rewarding. We want it to be a win for everybody.
We've shown already in clinical studies and trials that retention is up to 70% higher in virtual reality. That has a huge impact on learning and retention of facts.
The challenge is for universities to really develop their students' digital skills so that they can actually make use of those skills in the workplace. It would be all too easy to say everyone must learn to code, But the truth is, coding is just one digital skill.
Creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, these skills that can never be automated, that can never be replaced, are what we need to focus on.
Education 4.0 is a request to the education sector to rethink the educational paradigm. And it's an opportunity for us as this fourth industrial revolution kicks off to think about what modern education should look like.
I remember the teacher talked and we listened.
Thank you. Okay, so as you could see from this video, we are on the threshold of the fourth industrial revolution, an all-encompassing technological renaissance. Are we ready for it? And more importantly, are our children being prepared for it? Today, as I said, I couldn't be more excited because I'm here with some of the brightest minds in education to closely examine these questions. So can you unmute Aditya, Roshan, and Mauro, please? My first question is to Aditya Patil. Yeah. So Aditya, I think the question that's begging to be asked is what children are learning in school today even relevant? And will it help them in this rapidly changing world of automation and technology? And juxtaposed with the current conventional curriculum, what are some of the issues with what they are, the conventional system, and what they should be learning?
Great question, Bharati. I think currently what the students are learning in sort of traditional or conventional schools is more of assimilating information and regurgitating that information out during a test or during an exam. Which I think is a method that was from years and years ago. I have this analogy that I talk to parents a lot about, is that would you want to go to a dentist or a doctor who's actually using methods from when your grandparents went to him or your parents went to him? You want to go to a dentist or a doctor who's actually practicing modern medicine. In the same way, I don't think education as a space has had the change it needs to have. It's also got to do a lot with the scale also. I mean, the number of schools that are there in our country and the boards that represent those schools. I think to initiate change, it takes a long time and it also takes multiple levels of execution that has to happen. So from a content specific teaching point of view, content can now be found out by all of us on this call. If you need to find when did the Dandi March start during the independence movement of India, we can all find that out within less than 4 seconds or 3 seconds now, depending on what connection you're using. So it's no longer important to remember the dates of historic events. It's more important for us to remember why they happened, what inspired those events, what inspired those people to take those steps at those points in time, and also to understand multiple viewpoints of the people at those points in time in history, if you're looking at history as a subject. It's no longer important to remember facts and figures. Those are available for everyone at our fingertips now. So from that point of view, I think the education system has still, the traditional system still focuses on memorizing and sort of remembering certain things. Don't get me wrong, it's important to remember and memorize certain things, obviously, but not everything. You have to know your math facts, and memorizing them is really important, and that will help you in doing math quicker. But it's not important to memorize everything else along with that. So I think that's where the sort of system currently is not balanced in the right way. I would say it's fully skewed towards memorizing and regurgitating that whatever is from your memory onto paper, and that's what is graded as at the end of the year or in the middle of the year in most schools.
So you're saying it's more skewed to memorizing as opposed to questioning or thinking differently, or what should they be focusing more on?
So I think what you brought up, questioning, I think that's one of the ways we all learn. I think adults also learn best by questioning. We ask questions and we try and find out information about that. That is something that's discouraged in the traditional model. The traditional model is more built towards the teacher or the person in front of the classroom knows everything and is imparting the knowledge rather than being questioned, or there's no discussion that happens as such in most education environments. It's more of a lecture model wherein you're spoken to at or you're being told what the information is, which I don't think is relevant anymore. We all learn differently. We all have various ways of learning. And I think one of the ways that all of us assimilate information around us is by asking questions or finding out different things about the world, what we're engaged in, what we're interested in. I think what the traditional model also doesn't account for is engagement of students. there's a certain set of curriculum that needs to be taught and has to be taught, rather than looking at student engagement and how that engagement actually could increase student learning. So yeah, the model hasn't changed for a very, very long time. And I think parents and even students have access to so much information even outside of school now, that it has completely changed the perspective of a lot of students and parents across the world, not just in India.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And, I'm curious to know also now from Professor Mauro, who's leading a school in Italy. So I think Aditya kind of highlighted what's not working. So what really is worth learning today, and what learning kind of truly matters, I think, is what's on every parent's mind when they're looking for a school. So what are some of the kind of elements parents should look for when they're choosing a school with its eye on the future?
Thank you. It's a nice question, especially because all the parents went to school, and all the parents remember how the school was. So I think the 90% of the parents consider the old system old, but they are not able to imagine a new system. So they are always comparing what they have done and what we can offer. And there is, in the middle, there is a kind of yes, but. No, yes, but. They don't have to learn by memory, as I told before. Everything, yes, but I learn by memory. I learned by memory. So, and this is a very important point, because for sure now we have new subjects and new technologies that we can integrate into our curriculum. Imagine computer science, and so coding. Imagine how we can use, or we are starting to use AR and VR into the lessons. What is important to explain, I think, to the parents is let me say, the deep meaning of these new subjects. We don't have to teach coding to kids, I don't know, 3 years old or 5 years old or 6 years old or 10 years old, because they have to code. There are some meta competencies that they are learning when they try to code. So, for example, I saw with our students that they are 8 years old, trying to code to move a drone. They have to produce 3 different elements, not just like a usual graph, because there is, with one direction they move, I don't know, from left to right and right to left. With another they move forward and back, but they have to go up, and so I have to introduce a 3rd direction. And so the kids, when they are 8 years old, they realize something that they have to study by memory when they will be 11. And so this is something that we can introduce immediately with the kids. What is important from my point is that we are using technologies to create for new skills. We don't have to use technology, I don't know, a laptop and a fake pen to teach the kids how to write. But this is important, not because they have to learn how to write because they will send a postcard when they will be 20 years old, or they will send a letter. Probably they will never, ever in their life send a letter or send a postcard. But they have to learn how to write, because there are some meta competencies. Because writing with a pen on scrap paper, you learn how to reflect in deeper. So if you give to a kid an iPad or a laptop when they are 3 years old or 5 years old or 6 years old, and they learn how to write with them, they are not highlighting their brain, the entire brain. They are highlighting just the brain for the fingers. So they are not passing information to the brain. They are not developing the thought. They are just developing a skill that is to push a finger. So what is important is, with the iPad, for example, we can do something different. When, I don't know, a teacher explain a poem, and then ask the kids, okay, go home and try to describe the poems. With an iPad, a kid can try to describe the poem in different ways. He can write with a pen on the paper, but he can, I don't know, try to explain the poem with the video that he or she can create, or creating music, or putting together some picture that try to reflect what he or she was feeling reading the poem. And so this is, in this way, they are developing better or deeper the creativity. At the same time, we can use the new tools for all skills, but when the old skills are completely acquired. For example, I can use my iPad or my laptop to prepare a PowerPoint, or to, I don't know, write some mind map. But I learned when I was young to highlight the PowerPoint and not to copy and paste text.
Yeah.
Because the difficulties of using PowerPoint is the PowerPoint or the keynote, no? And so, can the students use the PowerPoint? Yes, but before they have to learn to highlight the key concept. Okay. And so this is how to use from my point, and then I stop.
I'm gonna have to get to Roshan, but kind of what I'm hearing is one of the very important things that a parent who's looking for a future-ready school the school has to be very tech-oriented. Like there has to be integration of technology in the curriculum, but in a proper way, not just using your fingers, and which will kind of alight the whole brain. So Roshan, I think this is a very important question that I want to ask you as well, because there are lots of parents who are also considering CBSE and ICSE schools, and I know CMS follows the national board. So same kind of question, what should they be looking for when they're looking for a future-ready CBSE or ICSE school? Like some factors that they have to consider while selecting?
I think a future-ready school is defined by the approach of its teachers. So the use of technology and everything, this is the latest tool, and of course it's important and valuable. But technology is simply a tool in the hand of teachers, right? And I think you can really tell apart a future-ready school from the culture of the school and from the attitude of the teachers and from the systems that are in place to empower teachers, right? So if there is regular teacher training that happens, if teachers engage in programs of continuous professional development, it's likely that there's a future-ready school. If there's evidence that the school is sort of utilizing pedagogical techniques that enable the learning of skills, for example, project-based learning and experiential learning, it looks like a more future-ready school is likely to be there. And technology, because I think the focus here has been a little bit on technology, and I want to just say that technology is one tool that can help in facilitating better pedagogical methods. It's really great for example, flipped learning. It's great for maybe taking away some of the time that it takes to deliver the basic core curriculum, because maybe the technology can deliver the curriculum. You can watch videos to learn the basic stuff, so that frees up class time to engage in more activity-based learning, peer learning, project-based learning, etc., etc.
so that students have the opportunity to learn the core skills that are important, right? Like, I think we heard in the video that you played in the beginning, the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. Those can only be learned through certain pedagogical techniques and a certain atmosphere that the teacher creates in a classroom. So I think those are the indicators of a future-ready school. It's the way that the teachers behave, and it's the way that the teachers are empowered. And if you're a parent, you might want to evaluate the leadership and the attitude that they have towards teachers. Because if you go into a very traditional school, it might be following the same board, it might be talking all the right buzzwords. But how do you know that something is actually happening? You talk to the leaders and you find out, are they administrators in a traditional sense, that they just kind of, make sure everyone's doing their job? Or are they, leaders of learning? Are they people who, take teachers under their wing, who kind of guide teachers through observations, who work as coaches towards their teachers to empower them with better teaching skills, who identify the training needs for teachers and provide specific training programs for those teachers? That is what will define a future-ready school, I feel.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that really kind of crystallizes some of the important things that I think parents need to look out for. And and that's so important, like the soft skills and the hands-on learning. And these are some of the critical pedagogies of education that's relevant today. And that's an aspect, like as even Professor Mauro was saying, it's an aspect that parents struggle to accept because it's so different from what they learned in school. So when kind of schools focus on these quote unquote new age skills, parents are afraid that their kids are not learning the core competencies, whether memory or literacy, numeracy, and are falling behind in what they think are core concepts. So I kind of wanted Aditya's comment on this, where this fear of parents that these are soft skills, they're not attuned with that these are going to be very hard skills in the future.
So I think it is, one of the biggest pieces we do is also parent education. When they come and when they're considering schools, or considering our school at least, there's a big parent education piece wherein, and like Professor Mauro said, everyone's gone to school, everyone knows what a school should look like. There isn't anyone who hasn't gone to school. So I think it starts right from there, that I went to school and it worked out fine for me, is what a lot of parents come to us and say. But I think what they don't take into consideration is that they made the system work for them. It did not work for everyone in the class or the number of kids who are in that setting. It worked for the 4 or 5% or 6 or 7 or 8% of the students who are in that system. And also it worked for them maybe a decade ago or even beyond that, maybe 20 years ago. And things have changed, just like medicine has evolved, like I go back to saying, education has evolved as well. So I think it is definitely a parent education piece that we're talking about, this being important. I think it's also important for a school to strike a balance. And I think, like Roshan was saying, it's really important to have passionate teachers to work with students along with the tech tools as well. It's not just technology or the other. So I think that's what parents want to see, is that the teachers are really passionate about working with students about the subjects that they're teaching. If a teacher is passionate about maths, I think he or she will be able to inspire the students to be passionate about maths. It doesn't need to be an IB school or an ICC school or a CBSE school. It doesn't matter what kind of school it is. So I think that's what parents look for, and that's what we talk to parents about, is that meet the teachers, talk to them, see where they are at, and are they really able to inspire you and your students to do what they need to do. And that's what usually gets them on board compared to just thinking of content and the traditional way of teaching.
And the other question I kind of wanted to come to, and it was actually for you, Aditya, but it was that, in the earlier times, parents were not kind of too involved in their children's education, whereas in today's world, schoolwork isn't confined just to the classroom. It extends into the home with online, hybrid, flipped learning, as Roshan mentioned. So kind of some parents seem to be concerned that there's too much expected from them in their child's learning journey. So what would you say, and there may be more that they need to do in 21st century education. So what would you say is the role of parents in the modern education journey? And if anyone, Roshan or Mauro, you all want to add to this, please feel free.
So I think, we think parents are equal partners in the education journey for students. We look at the teachers as one set of teachers for the student, and they're also spending a large amount of the time at home as well. So parents have to align with the school philosophically and believe that they also have a role to play. It is no longer the system wherein you drop your child off at school and then once they're inside the school gate, they're learning, and when the parents aren't concerned. And I think the last couple of years have also taught us that these tools in terms of communicating with parents can also keep them up to date with what's going on in the school on a much more regular and more real-time basis. Is what we've really seen. And I think parents also want to know more. I sort of meet parents every day, and they always want to know more of what's going on in the school compared to what they would want to know 10 years ago. So I think even the parents' perspective has changed, that when they go to school, they want to know what's going on with their student, what they're learning, what they're not learning, what their growth areas are. So I think even parents have come a long way from that sense, and schools definitely look at parents as partners and want to sort of continue learning. I mean, just to give you a small example, if a student has done something challenging and has read that first chapter book at school, what the parents need to do at home is celebrate that reading and that ability of the child to be able to read that at home and make it the biggest deal possible. And then sort of help the school in that way, where the next time a book is presented to that child, they will want to read that book again because it's been a celebration at home and at school as well. So it's really small things that we really want sort of parents to do at home and take back at home and actually further the students' learning, not be in charge of the learning. That I think parents are really scared of, is that teaching their kids. It's more of furthering or sort of enhancing what's being done at school at home is what the parents' role has become and should be, I think, in the future as well.
Great. Okay, so Professor Mauro, my next question is to you. So as we saw from the video as well, all the kind of growth industries are looking for innovators. Innovation is the big thing, and creativity and original thinking will be essential for survival in the future world of work. So what should schools be teaching in terms of, like, I know HFAM has this kind of startup culture. So what does this new kind of pedagogy look like to prepare kids for the fourth industrial revolution?
This is another nice question, because I think that at the same time we have to connect the question to the countries where we are, or the part of the countries where we are, because that there are not always the school can offer what, for example, we can offer. No, in our part of Italy, or for our parents, it's easier than for other parents to buy, I don't know, something, to buy iPad or to buy support, and so for sure there are some curriculum or subject that we can introduce, or approaches, but for me what is important is that we can do it even in schools or in systems where there are not so many technology. I try to explain a little bit more better. There is Sir Ken Robinson, that was a really important let me say speaker on TED Talks about education, said the role of the teacher is facilitate learning. That's it. So it looks easy. And so if we try to be focused on learning instead of teaching, and all the teachers try to be focused on learning instead of teaching, immediately everything changes. I try to explain with a couple of examples, very easy. History. If we are focused on teaching, I'm teaching history. At the end of the lesson, I go home. Tomorrow, the kids have to come back and repeat what they've done. Fine. You know 7, 8, 9, 10, 100. You don't know 0. It's easy. If I'm focused on learning, I can be focused on the meaning of history. And so I can ask to my kids, I can ask my kids to reflect about history. I can ask them, what do you understand? What do you think about it? Why Napoleon did this, or why, I don't know, someone else, Alexandro Magno did this? And so they have to reflect about it. The Latin said, historia magistra vitae, the history is the teacher of the life. So what is important? It's important that when we teach, that we have to be focused on learning. Now, put on coding. I want to have a school, and we introduce coding everywhere. And my teacher is focused on teaching. So my teacher will fill the whiteboard, the best whiteboard in the world, the most modern whiteboard in the world, with symbols, with letters, with comma, and so on. The kids copy and paste. They go home, they will do the same. They come back tomorrow, nothing. Again, is the teacher focused on learning? So when, I think the first start is the school focused on learning? Is the teacher focused on learning? Because when you are focused on learning, you increase the ownership of the kids. The kids feel they are learning by themselves. And so they are developing their life experience into the school. Then for sure, if we have, and then I stop, if we have the opportunity to provide them with a new subject, or let me say new fake subjects, and now we explain why. We in H Farm we have I don't know, the acceleration lab, the ignition lab, the startup lab, and for the kids, wow, I'll do the startup lab. And so at the end of the year, our kids have to prepare, have to develop a project, an app or a website or whatever. But we are not interested in the final result. We are interested in the process. What are they learning during the years? And again, it's meta competencies. They are working together. They are working not like me, you, and two smart guys so we can chat and they have to do, because they have different roles. And so they start to work together with different roles, like in the real life, because I have more skills than you in something and you have more skills than me in another part. So what we are doing this way, we are developing the 4 C's, for example, but we don't tell the kids, okay, from 1 year there will be group work. For the kids, it's, oh my God, 1 year with the same people to do something. No, we are developing an app. Wow. And so we are not interested in the app. You know, because if you study history, as I told you, focus on learning, the kids at the end can go to the university and study coding and become a wonderful, we can go to Boston Dynamics, you know, but it's because the mindset is created by the focus on learning. And this is my point.
Got it. So it's the process that's more important than the final result. And also meta competencies, you mentioned meta competencies. Can you give us some examples of what a meta competency would be?
For example, we don't teach the kids to write because they will write in the future, but we are to teach the kids to write because they have to develop the deep thought. Okay. Or when you teach maths, you don't teach maths because they have to learn that 2 + 2 is 4, but because they are becoming bright with maths. And when a kid said, I don't know, I don't understand why I have to study maths, I always answer, you didn't study maths enough. You are not enough bright to understand why you have to study maths.
Okay. Thanks. Roshan, yeah, so just picking up from that as well, like there've been so much kind of talk about, you know, the kind of World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report says that kind of the most desired skill sets of the future are skills that are not considered crucial to the job today. So, and you kind of mentioned this, but it would be great if you could elaborate for the audience. What do you predict would kind of be the core skills that are essential for the new economic and digital age?
The essential skills are those which are essentially human, right? Those which technology can't replicate. So for example, you know, technology can already do a huge amount and is going to be rapidly exponentially increasing in its power. And it's going to be able to do a lot of tasks that humans currently do. It's going to automate a lot of things that we currently take for granted as human things. And yet there are going to be certain things for which, no one can say never, but certainly for the foreseeable future, for at least a few decades, we hope, that will remain essentially human. Right. So, humans have this ability. So technology has this superiority when it comes to harnessing data, right? So when there's a large information from which patterns have to be derived to perform actions, technology will always have the edge over humans. But humans have this ability to, create new ideas out of nowhere, right? And that's something that, technology as of yet, and the trajectory that it appears to be on, it's likely to be very far away to truly be creative, right? So creativity is a skill that's essentially human. And to ascribe meaning to things, to ascribe meaning and value and the things that matter to humans to anything in the world is something that technology can't yet do. And that's really what critical thinking is, right? So critical thinking, to understand concepts and to derive meaning from those concepts and to utilize those concepts in a way that, affect how a person lives, that's an essentially human skill. So that's why critical thinking is something essentially human. And then, of course, machines can always communicate with each other in the sense of, they can convey information from one place to another very efficiently, more efficiently than humans can in some ways. And yet what they can't necessarily do is convey concepts and ideas in a way that persuades or that, changes minds or that appeals to emotions, right? So that kind of communication is something that is inherently human. And I think collaboration also is an inherently human skill, because humans have this ability that when they put their minds together in a team, they're able to sort of be more than the sum of their parts, right? So one supercomputer can synthesize infinite amounts of data and derive insights from that. But a group of humans who apply their creative faculties together can really create sort of, powerful new information and new ways of thinking and new ways of working. So, those 4 C's that I've just mentioned, again, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity. I think the reason why we highlight these skills is because they are essentially human skills that technology cannot replicate anytime in the foreseeable future. And so those are therefore the skills that we need to work on for humans to have. Because as you said, the job market, I mean, it's not like all the jobs are going to go away, but what's going to happen is, for example, today, an engineering project, supposing it requires a team of 20 engineers, what's going to happen is that there's still going to be engineers working on engineering projects, right? But maybe 15 or 18 of those engineers will be plodding along doing all of the mathematical work and the calculations and the routine work that is associated with engineering. And so their jobs will be automated. But you'll still have 2 or 3 core engineers who are creating the concept, who are designing the ideas, who are putting things, who are creating original material. And that's where the human skills would remain in place. So it's not like, engineering will be completely eradicated by technology, but which aspect of the engineering work is useful for a human to do, that's what we have to focus on. Yeah.
So I think, and that's what the schools kind of need to simulate in the classroom. And that's why we keep talking about project-based learning or startup culture. It's that, how do you teach them those strategic skills as opposed to the skills that are going to be automated? And that's the kind of big question, I think, and the big shift that needs to come in the classrooms. And that kind of leads me to my next question in terms of project-based learning, as everyone has kind of mentioned, is a pedagogy that's widely now accepted as learning for the future. So kind of how does, maybe, and I know Aditya's school Ascend follows this pedagogy, probably all, even HFARM and CMS as well. How does project-based learning work, and how does it kind of develop the skills we've been referring to? And, like, how is it more advantageous than the normal way that we kind of did in school?
So I think to understand what PBL or project-based learning is, I think we need to understand that project-based learning is learning the skill along with the project. What most schools do is teach a skill and then do the project afterwards, or then do a product at the end of the cycle. Whereas PBL stands for learning the skill along the way. So you're not just learning something at the end of it or producing something at the end of it. You're learning the skill along the way. So it's also contextual. You need to learn it to finish the project or to do the project. You're getting experts in to talk to the students. That's what we do. We try and get field experts to talk to kids. I mean, just to give you a small example, we were looking at topographical maps. So we actually had a cartographer come and talk to our kids. And the cartographer is actually working with Tesla and such companies to make maps of other planets now. So just a simple thing like a topographical map, and how do you get kids engaged and excited about that and to design one or to even read one. We actually had a cartographer come in and talk to them about that, and now they're making their own maps through pictures that they're seeing of different parts of India and things like that. So I think project-based learning is an approach wherein the skill is put in a context where the students have to learn and practice that skill along the way and not at the end of it. And I think that's how most projects function in real life. It's not really a way of teaching. I think it's the way that we all sort of learn after we finish our education. And if we take up a new project or a new business, you're learning along the way. You don't learn something and then implement the business. You learn along the way. And even for startups, I think the learning happens along the process. And that's what we're trying to emulate for students. And I think what we do and what I think HFARM and even schools do, I think it's creating a safe space for kids to fail. I think that's something we really talk about and highlight on, is that learning through failure. And actually, when you fail at something, what do you do next? You reflect on what happened, then you move ahead. So I think project-based learning for us, it's sort of this, all of these factors that come together is contextualizing the skills, giving them a reason to learn those skills and learning them along the way, and also failing multiple times and then sort of learning from that as you move ahead. And that's what I think the real life, I mean, what we do in real life, and we're trying to bring that to students and to give them that exposure at a very early age and talking to experts. I think that really inspires students a lot, is trying to talk to a cartographer rather than one of us looking at a map. We have a cartographer come and talk to our students and what maps are they working on, designing on, and so on and so forth. So I think getting students excited and building a context around it is really important, and then stretching them from there on is what project-based learning does.
Professor Mauro, would you, or Roshan, would you like to add to this?
No, I think that they answer very well to your question, and they explain very well the idea of the projects. Again, it's always important, as he said, not the final result. The final result is something that we can decide what we want, but is that during the process they learn the skills, so they develop better the skills that we want. So they develop the skills without working on the skills, but it's something, a natural process. And when a process is natural, it's always deeper than when we try to push them or force them to do something. So I totally agree with them. From my point, it's important.
Okay, so anyway, my next question is to you, Roshan. It's kind of tech oriented. So we've been talking about how tech and artificial intelligence will impact every activity and every industry, even entertainment, law, medicine. And obviously it also has had a big impact in education. So while we say, yes, technology is just a tool, it's still a very beneficial tool in my view. And I think parents are often concerned and confused about the role of computers in school and screen time. So if you could, and I know you're a tech expert, so maybe could you explain the importance of technology in the classroom? Like, what are the benefits for the student and the teacher in the learning journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important question. And I do agree that, of course, technology plays a fundamental role now, and it can have the potential to really improve outcomes. So as I say, it's a tool in the hand of teachers, but I guess the question is, you know, how is that tool used, or what are the benefits of that tool? And I think, you know, technology in education can serve multiple purposes. So I think, you know, it's been a long desired thing in the classroom that teachers should be able to teach in a differentiated manner, right? So different students in their classroom will have different strengths and weaknesses, and they should be able to try to target their teaching. And that requires a very high level of teaching skill that, you know, a lot of teachers, you know, it's difficult to attain. I mean, to teach a class in a differentiated manner, it's a difficult thing to do. But technology really assists that, right? Because when a student has undertaken some work on a technological platform. There's this generation of data which can be very simplified and made very accessible to any teacher to really pinpoint, how the different children are performing and to target their interventions accordingly. So traditionally, there's been, formative assessment. There've been sort of informal ways of teachers being able to gauge the performance of different members of their class. So in a way, technology is a much more robust, easy access, efficient, effective method of formative assessment. So rather than a quick check for understanding at the end of a lesson or a show of hands or a writing on a board in the class, all of those traditional methods of formative assessment, you use technology and you generate data that really powerfully enables formative assessment. The other thing is that technology is a great way for students to access learning content. A lot of what a teacher traditionally does is to stand at the front of the classroom and download information to students. And as Aditya said in the beginning, that is something we need to move away from, and yet it's always going to be there to stay partly, right? There is going to be some level of facts that students need to learn. So can we move that away from the core class time and make it something that students do in their own time? That's where technology can help. So technology can help students to watch video lectures and high quality kind of information that way. And they can do it even better to some extent because, they can pause the video, they can rewind, they can watch things again. So at their own pace, they can kind of master that basic content. And because they're not spending that time in the classroom, that means that the classroom time can be used for activity-based learning, because there isn't always time to do both because the curriculum is too large. And I think technology also benefits in other ways. I think that there's some interesting kind of developments in technology. The power of adaptive learning, for example, seems quite interesting because that's something which, in theory, tracks a child's progress so closely, and by comparing that child's performance against a lot of other big data, is able to really pinpoint content and interventions and assessments and the whole, learning experience to the child in a very tailored fashion that can enable the child to master concepts at their own pace. So I think these are some of the main benefits of how technology can really help in education, how it's starting to revolutionize education. And there's a myriad other possibilities as well, but these are some of the key points that I can think of.
And what I'm kind of hearing is a lot of this is tech that's going to be used by the teacher to assess where the child is. I think when parents hear of tech, they are visualizing a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old with a computer in their hand, and that's why this whole screen time debate has come up. So what is your view on that? Like, are very small kids also, I mean, it's fine for them to be using devices, that's just the way it is, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, there's a place for all of that. I think, screen time is inevitable. I mean, look at us now. We're all sitting on a webinar, adding to our screen time voluntarily, even though we've probably been sitting in, Zoom meetings at work all day already, because we know that this is just how life is, right? So trying to kind of keep kids off screen time is a bit of a pointless endeavor because sooner or later they're going to end up back on it. The point is, can we make their screen time productive? Can we differentiate between good screen time and bad screen time? Can we assist them so that instead of clicking on the PUBG app, they click on the app that helps them to learn reading skills or that helps them to learn other skills, because there are really good, effective apps these days that can actually be very valuable, right? So it's a question of working with parents and educating them on what's good screen time, what's bad screen time, and making sure the kids themselves are empowered to know the difference as soon as they're old enough to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think that's really beneficial. And okay, so this is one of my last questions, and I would ask any of y'all can answer it and feel free to come in at any point. And we're also going to open up the chat box for the audience. If they have any questions, please put it in the chat box. So many parents are in a dilemma about which board to choose, to kind of best prepare their children for the future. Is it the ICSE? Is it the CBSE? Is it the IB? Is it the IGCSE? So which curriculum, in your views, lends itself best to inculcating 21st century skills? I'll start with Aditya.
I think rather than naming curriculum, I think the first thing is whichever curriculum actually puts the learning in the hands of the teachers. I think because the teachers get to know the students really well. So whichever program where the teachers are able to really build and engage the students really well, I think is a right fit. When parents are looking at a school, I think it has to be a philosophical match. Whatever board you're selecting or whatever way of studying or whichever school you're going to, I think parents have to be aligned with that philosophy. If it's IGCSE, ICSE, CBSE, or IB, I think parents need to understand that this is what this is what their students will be learning and how they'll be learning. And I think that's really, I think, the bottom of it. I think from our perspective, I think why we selected or why we are an IB school is because it gave us the flexibility of building curriculum, designing tasks. I think formative and summative assessments like Roshan spoke, is a big part of the IB. So actually seeing where the students are at, having them go through a unit of inquiry, and then at the end of it, seeing what they've learned was really important for us. And I think skills is something that we really focus on, is teaching kids skills. A small skill that, most students learn when they're 3 is rote counting to 10. We can teach it however we want, but the skill to be taught is rote counting to 10, or say addition or subtraction. We've outlined the skill that we want to teach, and the IB gives us the flexibility to teach that skill the way we want to teach them in the context that we want to give it. So that's why I would think in terms of empowering teachers and actually having teachers build curriculum and program, I think the IB really lends itself really well for that approach.
Roshan?
Yeah, I think I'll avoid sparking controversy by commenting on whether the CBSE or the ICSE or whatever is better. But in general terms, the international boards moved earlier in the direction of creating a curriculum that facilitates skills-based learning. Right? So whether it's the IB or the Cambridge board or other international boards, they have a tendency to to have a curriculum that lends itself, and an assessment pattern that lends itself to skills-based learning. The Indian boards, their assessment pattern still mostly lends itself to rote learning, right? So that doesn't mean that schools who subscribe to the ICSE or the CBSE can't teach with understanding, can't teach skill-based education, right? They absolutely can, and they should, and better ones are. But that's a decision that can be made at the school level, at the leadership level, at the teacher level. That's in the way that the teachers choose to impart the same curriculum content. But at the end of the day, one tragedy that often happens is that schools, make efforts to teach with understanding up to class 8, and then from class 9th onwards, they switch back to factory-based learning because that's what's going to serve the board exams, right? And that's the metric that we have. So unless the assessment pattern changes, it'll be hard to fundamentally change that. But the international boards have an assessment pattern and a curriculum design that lends itself to skills-based learning.
Thanks, Roshan. Professor Mauro, any last comments?
No, I have to say that we are an IB school, and in the past I was in IGCSE and diploma program school. And I have to admit that I like IB in PYP and in middle years program. I don't like too much in diploma program. It looks like in PYP, okay, you are free to do, let me say, what you want a little bit. In MYP, okay, you can do enough, almost what you want, and then the last 2 years you have to do exactly what I ask you. So this the book, and no, even if this is IGCSE perhaps, but this is the book, this is what you have, this is. Because it's connected to the university, and so it's a kind of ISO, international standard, that they have to provide that all the kids have the same international standard recognized by universities. But it's interesting from my point what and especially in the past was thought about the education. For example, Montessori had a wonderful ideas, and for the school now it's difficult to move to middle school or high school because she was focused on especially on primary. But again, I agree with Adia and Roshan that is the international boards try to be focused on not on teaching by memory, not on repeat, but it's a little bit more wide. It's a little bit wider, not enough from my point, especially the diploma program, but this is, yes, I agree.
Got it. Got it. So it's wider than the CBSE, ICSE, but not as wide as you would like it to be. Even the DP, even the IBDP. Okay. Great. So I think we've come like to the end of this discussion, and I think there have been some amazing insights, and I hope the parents who are listening, educators who are listening have gained from it. What's clear kind of today is that many of the jobs that are even coveted today will be automated in the near future, and it's the creative and entrepreneurial and social intelligences that will be most in demand in tomorrow's workplace. And it's developing these intelligences that our education system needs to be focusing on. And that shift in pedagogy and mindset has been slow. And that's why these conversations are so vital, so that both parents and school leaders are aligned on what's important for students to be learning today to be prepared for tomorrow. So I'd like to thank our expert panelists, Professor Mauro, Roshan Gandhi, Aditya Patil, and IMC. Please do continue this conversation and post your comments on the IMC social media handles. And thank you very much.
Thanks to you.
Thank you very much, Bharti. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you, everyone.
On behalf of the Indian Merchant Chambers, thank you, everyone. To all our esteemed panelists, to the president, to the operating team at the IMC, Suzanne and Anita ji, thank you so much for helping us with the back end. To our special guest from Italy, Mauro, thank you so much. It was a delight to have you. Roshan, this was absolutely good screen time, best screen time I probably had in the last 2 years. So thank you for that. Aditya, I just love your insights, as always. I'm a big fan, and I always listen very dearly to what you have to say. Bharti, beautifully moderated. The questions were really well curated, and I think you were really able to make the best of the hour and the best of the intelligence that you had available to you. So thank you so much, everyone. And we are the IMC at the Education Committee. Most definitely look forward to all your active participation at our upcoming events. So thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.